for posterity. Some of you are apparently writing in and saying that you cannot hear anything at this point. So if you should be able to turn on your sound. Good. Thank you for telling me that somebody's sound's working. Fantastic. So we're going to get started on the presentation. This is who you're hearing on the call. My name is, again, Panama Bartholomy, and here's our agenda for the webinar today. We're just quickly going to be going over some of the energy efficient market realities that makes up the reason for why we are doing what we're doing. We're then going to be talking about our energy performance protocols and some of the benefits that can be offered from the project. And then talking about what our next 6 months of activities are going to be, and then how you can get involved in that process. There are some people that are having trouble calling in, so I'm just going to quickly tell them to click on the telephone icon at the top of the screen to call in, and hopefully we'll be able to get that. So if you have any questions during the webinar, we had over 235 people register for the conference call, and because of that, we have to unfortunately keep you all on mute. And so if you want to ask a question, we welcome questions. Please click the chat button at the top of the screen that's highlighted in the red square right here, and then please address your questions to @host. And then at the very end of the presentation, I'll go back over those questions, and we'll answer as many of them as we can within our 1 hour that we've allotted for this call. As I mentioned, this presentation is being recorded, and it will be posted at our website, europe.eeperformance.org, and we'll also email it out to all of the registrants as well. So as mentioned, this is actually an updated number. Thank you all for attending. We had over 236 people that have now RSVP'd for the webinar. Just to give you all an idea about who else is on the webinar, out of that 236 now that have registered, it's made up by a wide variety of different market players. And as you'll hear, the Investor Confidence Project Europe offers tools and resources for the entirety of the energy efficiency market. And I think that you see the representation here on the screen of everyone who's registered for this webinar. They also make up the entirety of the energy efficiency community here in Europe. This is where registrants for this call are coming from. The size of the lettering has to do with the number of people that register for that country. So the larger the lettering of the country, the more people that registered from that country for this presentation. So you can see very big representation from United Kingdom, Belgium, Germany, and Spain, and a number of other countries all joined in, including we have folks calling in from Australia, from the United States, Hong Kong, Turkey, and other parts of the world as well. So thank you all again for calling in. So the Investor Confidence Project Europe, at its core, is we are trying to enable a market for energy efficiency investment into quality building renovation programs, and we do that by offering tools and resources to be able to reduce transaction costs and engineering overhead. In short, we work to help investors manage their risk so that they can invest in energy efficiency. We help program administrators like governments and utilities reduce their program costs and attract private capital. And we help developers deliver more bankable projects. So at the heart of our efforts are really helping these three different critical players within the energy efficiency community and sector really help to do their jobs better. And the reason that we have to exist is because, unfortunately, in the energy efficiency community, if you're involved in this space, you know that there is a real gap between the potential of projects that are out there and the investment that's happening in them. You hear time and again right now across the efficiency community that there are lots of projects and there are developers with great projects, but they can't find money. And when you talk to the investment community says they have plenty of money, that they would like to invest into energy efficiency, but they cannot find a good pipeline of projects in order to invest. And so we started the Investor Confidence Project Europe to try to really bridge this gap and bring together projects and investors. And this gap is really well summed up by work done by the Energy Efficiency Financial Institutions Group. This was a group put together by the European Commission and by the UN Environment Programme's financing initiative. And this initiative brought together over 200 individuals from over 100 organizations, basically a huge amount of public and private banks, pension funds, asset managers, a large amount of different groups, all involved in financial transactions and the investment community, as well as involved in the energy efficiency community and in the building owner community as well. And this group is brought together to answer the basic question of why is a financial community not investing in energy efficiency, and what could be done to really bring about more investment from the institutional investment community into energy efficiency. And what's interesting is they just released their report, EFIG just released their report in the end of February with some fascinating results. But what they found is when they looked at what is the top driver affecting demand for energy efficiency investment, what they found was standardization was actually the top driver affecting demand for energy efficiency investment. And the top driver affecting the supply of energy efficiency investment was also standardization. And so what you have here is you have a large grouping of Europe's most engaged and involved investors and the financial community that are looking to invest in energy efficiency, saying very clearly the number one driver for their ability to invest into energy efficiency is standardization. And the lack of that standardization right now in the marketplace is preventing their investment from entering into the sector. And so what does that mean, that lack of standardization, and what is EFIG talking about? Well, in short, when the investor community looks at investing in energy efficiency projects, and they look at the projects that are brought to them, they see a wide variety of different standards used for calculating savings, different standards used for commissioning a project, different standards used or not for measuring and evaluating the project. And so even though you may have on the right side of the screen 3 Class A office buildings all in need of renovation, the process that is taken and the standards that are used in order to renovate those projects can all be completely different. And from an investor's perspective, this is very confusing. Many investors are not experts in energy efficiency. Many, even the largest firms, do not have large teams expert in energy efficiency. And so when you have different projects that use different standards and different processes and procedures brought to them, it can not only be very confusing to them, but they look at it as an area of higher risk. And this lack of standardization has significant impact on each different part of the market. For investors to have to dig through each project and then try to understand what standard, what process was used, and how they can diligence it, it represents really high transaction costs on projects. Additionally, many energy efficiency projects are smaller than what investors want to invest in, and this lack of standardization means that they are not able to actually aggregate projects and bring them together to a scale that they want to invest in. And both of these items prevent them from ever building a project pipeline and prevent investors from investing into this space. Administrators, quite often you have governments across Europe starting up energy efficiency programs, usually because of their Sustainable Energy Action Plan or for other commitments they made under climate plans, and so they're trying to start up energy efficiency programs. Many of them are doing this in isolation, starting up a program from scratch, designing the entire process by which they will accept projects, and the project should be carried out. And this lack of standardization means that each one of these governments is having to start up these programs on their own, paying for consultants or paying their own staff to start this up from scratch and try to develop it without knowing what everyone else is working on. Additionally, many of these programs at the government level rely on public funding in order to subsidize projects. And public funding is only going to go so long in the energy efficiency market. And we need to be thinking about what is the next step for governments. Local governments are taking leadership and starting these programs, but many local governments' budgets can't survive over the long term constantly subsidizing these programs. And so what you significantly have with a lack of standardization for program administrators is an inability to scale from beyond the first generation of programs that rely on public funding to eventually be able to get to that second generation where you can bring the market in to provide the funding and you don't have to keep putting your public funds towards these projects. And then lastly, this impact of the lack of standardization. Because investors can't invest into projects, developers can't find financing for their projects. And without financing, the projects don't go forward. And without standardization, you also do not get good data for projects. And so you, as a developer, you don't know what's working within the marketplace. A significant lack of data means you can't change your business plan or your business practices based on data from what's coming from the marketplace and what's working out there. This is all summed up really well by Michael Eckert, the Managing Director and Global Head of Finance and Sustainability at Citigroup. And he makes some, I think, very pertinent statements. He says energy efficiency is a category in itself. No two projects are alike. And if you have 1,000 different energy projects, they would have to read 1,000 different documents to be able to assess the risk. And fees just won't pay for that level of effort. I can still see that there are a few people that are having trouble calling in, so I'm just going to quickly tell them to click on the telephone icon at the top of the screen for audio. Great. So because of this lack of standardization and this importance to the marketplace, the Energy Efficiency Financial Institution Group recommended in their February 26th report that standards should be developed for Europe for each element in the energy efficiency investment process, and that these standards should be open place and establish a common vocabulary for knowledge across Europe. And at the link at the bottom of the screen, you can see this report. If you are involved in energy efficiency and finance within Europe, I highly recommend that you check out the report at the link at the very bottom of the screen. There are a number of events happening all across Europe by the FA group, and you can find out what those events are on that website and follow along, but it's one of the most seminal pieces written about energy efficiency and finance in our day. And so that's what we do at the Investor Confidence Project. We provide just these kind of open source tools and resources to really help the entirety of the energy efficiency market be able to improve project performance and to make projects more bankable and attractive to the financial community. And how do we do that? Well, luckily we're funded by the European Commission, its Horizon 2020 program, and then private foundations as well. Because of this public and private funding, we're able to be a nonprofit group that provides these open source, no-cost tools to the marketplace to be able to use. So what we do is we take this alphabet soup that investors see when they look at different projects, and we seek to align it and make it make sense for investors. And so we provide tools. The heart of them are energy performance protocols. And what these protocols are, they're basically guidance on an entire building renovation process, looking at a building renovation life cycle from baselining all the way through to measurement and verification. We look across Europe and define what are the best practice standards that are used in each part of the project lifecycle. And then we recommend their use within projects, within our protocols. And then most importantly, we also specify exactly what financial institutions and investors tell us they need as documentation coming out of each part of this project lifecycle. So investors tell us, here's how we need the baselining process documented. Here's how we need the commissioning process documented, the measurement and verification documented. And we put these into the protocols. And so our protocols act as project guidance for anybody involved in an energy efficiency renovation project. They are best practices that are currently used across the European marketplace and provide a guiding tool for project developers, for investors, and for program administrators. For project developers, they can take our protocols and basically follow along in this process to develop a high-performance project. It allows them to significantly manage performance risk because they're using best practice products and the project is signed off on by an independent third party. It reduces their engineering costs because they're not having to continually show the building owner that they're working for, or the program administrator that they're responding to, or the financer that's investing in the project. They do not have to show what process they are using because the process is open source and all those other parties can understand as well the standards that are going into the project. And in the end, because it provides the protocols bring transparency to the project development process, it can include the bankability or the investment attractiveness of a project. Program administrators that use our protocols, what they find is if they use our protocols, instead of having to start from scratch and developing their own project process for their energy efficiency program, they can use our protocols as the underlying project process for their programs. And if they do so, they know that they're working with independently verified European best practices, and this can streamline their processes and really aid them in developing a better data collection process because you're going to get more consistent projects delivered in a more standardized way and therefore better collection when you can compare projects to projects. You can also then have a consistent process that you can build your local contractor expertise in and build training programs around. And then what it allows you to do at the program level is really start to bring in private capital. Because you as a program administrator are going to be using clear, transparent, open source project process, you're going to be able to transition your program to the market because investors are going to be looking at projects coming out of your cities and your regions as more investment attractive because they understand the underlying process that was used to develop the projects within your program. And therefore, investors are going to be more willing to invest in projects within your community. And lastly, our protocols provide significant benefit to investors. Our protocols, if adopted by investors, can significantly cut down on their diligence process and costs. It allows investors to send a really clear message to the market of this is exactly the type of process we want you to use if we're going to invest in your project. And what it allows for eventually is for the facilitation of an actual project pipeline. If a clear message is sent from investors about the kind of project process they want developers and administrators to carry out, eventually the market comes into line and starts to deliver projects in that way. And you can start to get the pipeline of projects that investors really need in order to be able to be effective and be able to invest. So currently, Investor Confidence Project Europe is working on 6 different protocols. We're working on protocols for tertiary buildings, and in that we include retail, commercial, institutional, government, and office buildings. And then we're also working on apartment projects as well. And we separate the protocols out by different size. So we have large protocols for tertiary and apartments. Those are projects that are over 1 million euros and represent a whole building retrofit. We have standard tertiary and standard apartment protocols we're working on, and those are for renovation projects that are under €1 million, but are also a whole building retrofit still. And then we're developing what we're called targeted protocols for targeted tertiary buildings and targeted apartment buildings. And that's when you have buildings that are usually just a single measure, such as lighting or a boiler retrofit, or a very limited amount of numbers. So you're not doing a whole building retrofit. And so you have a much more targeted protocol for that. Just want to be clear before we go any farther what we're doing here with the protocols. Our protocols do not invent any new standards. As I've said earlier, we're relying on the best practice standards that are already being used within the European marketplace. What our job is to do is to identify what are those best practices already being used, align them well within the protocols, work with the financial community to make sure that they understand it and agree to that, and then offer it back to the community saying this is what investors are telling us will make them more willing to invest in projects. We are also not attempting to force anybody in any country to use a process or a standard from another country. The European renovation markets are built up through their countries and their national markets and the standards that have been developed and the best practices within those countries. And so we'll be building protocols that are reflective of both European and national best practices and standards. We are not involved in dictating the engineering or design of projects. To be very clear, when we talk about standards, we are talking purely about process standards. So standards like how are you calculating the savings? How are you commissioning the project? How are you evaluating and measuring the effectiveness of the project? We are not getting into standards such as building standards or any other engineering standards that would dictate the design of the project. And lastly, our protocols work for any energy efficiency project for a building, regardless of the size of the savings. So if your project is working on 15% savings, or if your project is working on 85% savings, you need a process that's going to give you greater confidence that the savings are going to be realized for that project. And that's what our protocols do. Our protocols, no matter your goal with your project, our protocols can help you better reach that goal. So as mentioned, we are engaged in developing these protocols, and we are working to make the protocols work for the entirety of the European community. And that means significantly researching European level protocols or best practice standards, but it also means researching national standards as well. And so we are working with experts across Europe to identify what those appropriate standards are for those different markets. And this is really critical because if we do not get the information from the ground, from the in-country experts, then we're going to have to go to market with tools that may leave out some countries. And so we would very much like to work with everyone on this call to be able to help us identify what are the best practice standards that are currently being used in your country. The link at the top of the screen takes you to an online form that we are using for that research. That form has 14 very basic questions. It'll take you 20 to 40 minutes to fill out. And that'll give us some guidance as to your opinion of what the best practice standards are that are used within your community. And so you can go to that link to be able to find that form, and we would very much like your help and participation on that. Or if you can't find that link again, you can just Google an ICP Europe standards, and the very first link will take you right to the form that you can use to help us identify what the best practice renovation standards are used in your country. Once we develop all of this research and we collect all of these standards, we bring it together and we start to build our protocols. And we do this. When we do this, it's very important that we are actually building tools that are going to work in the marketplace. So we're talking with all of the different market players that we've discussed, and you see here on the screen. And we do this in a group we call our Investor Confidence Project Technical Forum. And don't be turned off by the term technical. Yes, absolutely, we want the deeply technical people that are working on projects on a day-to-day basis on the engineering side, but also government programs have technical people that are working on developing and rolling out your energy efficiency program. Financiers in your diligence program have people that are working with standards and technical standards. And so we have a wide variety of people with different levels of technical expertise that can join us in our technical forum to help make sure that we're crafting protocols that will actually work for the marketplace, work for the European marketplace, and work specifically for the national marketplaces. So this technical forum, we're going to be starting it up in June. It's going to meet once a month for 2 hours each meeting over webinar. We're going to provide drafts of the protocols and then take a verbal comment as well as the opportunity for written comment on the protocols as well. And so it's incredibly important if you want to help shape the tools that we're going to be developed, you take part in the technical forum. And it's also a really great way of becoming familiar with the protocols as we're developing them as well. And so if you join the technical forum, you can follow along in that process. And when we finish them, you can decide whether or not you want to incorporate it into your program or your practice. And so we would love to have you join our European Technical Forum. You can go to this link to be able to sign up for the technical forum, or simply just Google ICP Europe Technical Forum in order to join up. There's a little form you can fill out there, and then, as I said, we'll be starting in June with our first meeting, meeting once a month for about 2 hours per meeting via webinar. So we welcome you to join us. Anybody involved in energy efficiency renovations should feel free to join us on the technical forum. So here's our pipeline for the development of our protocols. As I said, we're going to be developing 6 project protocols, for 3 for tertiary buildings and 3 for apartment blocks. We're going to be releasing the tertiary protocols in the June-July timeframe, with an idea of finalizing them in the August-September timeframe, finalizing our tertiary protocols. We'll then start to take those out to the market, which we'll talk about in a second. Right after that, we're going to be releasing our draft apartment block protocols, and then right about the end of the year, finalizing our 3 apartment protocols, so that by the end of the year, we're going to be having 6 protocols that can work for the European market in the areas of tertiary and apartment blocks. Once we finish with the protocols, we then work to take it out into the marketplace. And so we have paid staff in a number of countries and across Europe that are going to be working with really the demand side of the energy efficiency you see listed here, working to have investors, developers, property owners go ahead and adopt our protocols, and we help provide technical assistance to people that want to incorporate these protocols into their programs or into their investment funds or into their business practices. And then we're going to work on training programs for the supply side, for the developers, the quality assurance agents, the ESCO community, really providing training programs for the use of the protocols and our other tools that we'll be developing so they can apply those to projects. And lastly, we'll be working about bringing projects and finance together. So as I mentioned, we are working on tools that will work across the entirety of the European market. And we will work with any market player that wants to join us to develop tools that work for the whole European market and then deliver these tools for the whole European market. Thanks to European Commission funding, we have gotten money to hire direct staff in 5 countries. To be able to provide very focused deployment of these of the protocols and of all the other tools that we're developing. And so the flags that you see in the right part of the screen and the companies next to the flags are the firms that we have hired, thanks to the European Commission funding, in order to help with dissemination of the protocols and the integration of the protocols into projects and programs within these 5 countries. So please don't come away from this call thinking that we are only working on tools or only working in these 5 countries. What we are saying here is that the European Commission has given us money to allow us to do some additional outreach in these countries through these 4 fantastic firms. But we want to work with anybody in the European marketplace to provide some of these same services as well. We are advised by a great group of leaders within the marketplace. Our Investor Confidence Project Europe steering group advises us in this effort. This is a fantastic collection of public and private, supply side, demand side, groups that really represent leadership across Europe that are engaged with us to help guide our efforts and make sure that we're developing projects and processes that are actually going to work for the European marketplace. And we're also assisted by the wide variety of different market players. Our European Ally Network is a great collection. We're up to now 70 different organizations that have voluntarily signed up for our Ally Network. Our Ally Network is a free networking opportunity. It's an opportunity for you to sign up on our website, become associated with our project, and hear about, as we release tools and resources, hear about those before other parties, and hear about opportunities for training and other information that we develop as well. More and more, we're doing what I mentioned a couple slides earlier, starting to bring together projects and finance as well. And just one example of that, a couple months ago, we were working with a great investor, Jules Assets on the bottom right of your screen, who said they're looking for projects within the European marketplace, good projects that are performed by great companies that are high quality. SIA in Italy, a great ESCO in the Italian market, came to us actually a couple weeks later and said, we're looking for funding. We have a great project. We're renovating 1,500 boilers in residential units in the Milan area, and we're looking for funding for a project. We're able to bring SIA and Jules Assets together, and they're currently working on a contract together. And so this is the kind of networking opportunity that we'd like to provide. Lots of opportunities to work with other market leaders within the European energy efficiency sector. So we would love to have you join our Ally Network. It's really the best way to work with us. As I mentioned, it's free, nothing to join. We don't do a lot of web blasts, but when we do, they're high value content that you can use immediately within your organization. So there's the website for how to join the Ally Network. And then if you have trouble finding the website, just feel free to Google ICP Europe Ally. The very first link will take you right to the sign up page for our Ally Network. So I'm going to be finishing up here with just a couple more slides. And really fundamentally, everyone, standardization and the lack of standardization is one of the biggest barriers within the energy efficiency financing marketplace. It is not the only barrier, but it is the top barrier that the financial community has identified as keeping them from being able to unlock their reserves and their investments into this space. And as we pointed out in this presentation, a lack of standardization really hurts the entirety of the market in common and unique ways. And so we very much feel that standardization and the work that we would like to do to you was going to provide significant benefits to the European marketplace. And really what it does is it creates a common language for all of us to work off of. And that common language allows us to bring the market together to be working on the same kind of projects in the same ways and to be able to unlock financing. And so here are a number of the different players within the European energy efficiency marketplace and some of the benefits of standardization of the type that we're talking about and how it can help them. So how can you get involved in this process? And really the success of this process is going to be based on how you get involved and work with us. We would love for you to join the Investor Confidence Project Technical Forum. And if you just Google ICP Europe Technical Forum, you can get onto a forum that will tell you exactly how to join into that technical forum. Meets once a month, 2 hours per meeting, all via webinar, and it's all a feedback-based forum. We would love for you to join our free, no-cost ICP Europe Ally Network. Best way to find that, just Google ICP Europe Ally. We will put your logo up on our website. We will put your logo in our presentations, and as we travel across Europe, we will highlight you as one of the leaders within the marketplace that agree with us that we need high-quality, standardized projects if we're ever going to truly reach the scale the energy efficiency community needs to meet. And then we'd love for you to sign up for updates for the project and to visit our website at europe.eeperformance.org as well. These are the 3 easiest ways for you to get involved in the process. All of them are completely no-cost ways to be involved, and we really look forward to seeing your name come across our screens as having signed up for one or all of these opportunities. So at this point, I will open it up to any questions that you may have. We have about another 15 minutes to answer questions, so I'll get through as many of the questions as I can. Here is our contact information, our website, and my contact information. If there's any questions you have, you can always contact us at any time. We're happy to answer any questions offline at any point. And please do visit the website. So right now I'm going to go over some of the questions that were asked during the presentation. So a number of the first questions had to do with audio and people having a hard time getting the audio to work. So the first question was, are the protocols in use already? Does anybody have already experiences in using them? And we're lucky with financing from a developer's perspective. So we are still building the European protocols. As I mentioned, we're going to be releasing the first draft protocols for tertiary buildings in June or July of this year, depending on how the technical forum goes. We do have a sister program in the United States that has developed these protocols. It's been going for about 4 years in the United States, and they are being used by project development teams in across the country, but significantly in Connecticut, New York, Texas, and California through different programs run by utilities and government agencies. And those states represent about 1/3 of the population of the United States and just about 39% of the GDP of the United States. So those are very critical states to have adopt our adopt our protocols and start to use them within projects. But currently, we're still building the protocols for the European market. There's a question about no protocol for warehousing or logistic buildings. If the warehouses or logistic buildings could work as tertiary buildings, which I believe they normally would, you could use our tertiary protocols for warehousing and logistic buildings, and those building types would fall under our definition of a tertiary building. To be clear, we are not developing protocols for the industrial market at this point, but for those industrial complexes that have office buildings, logistics buildings, or warehouses on them, you could use our tertiary protocols for that. There's a question about will the webinar be available online at a later stage? And yes, the webinar will be available online. We'll have it on our website with no timeline for taking it off. It'll be up there, and we'll also send it out to everybody that RSVP'd for this presentation. There was a question about the slide where I said the CapEx limits for different size tertiary, different size project protocols. So I mentioned that our project protocols are based on our large protocols are for projects, CapEx projects over 1 million euros, and our standard protocols are for tertiary and apartment buildings under 1 million euros in CapEx. And so the question is, are the CapEx only for energy efficiency investments? And the short answer is yes. Yeah, we're just looking at CapEx investments over or under 1 million euros. There's a question about how are the national peculiarities such as funding schemes, tax breaks being taken into account. So it's being taken into account in a number of ways. These tax schemes or funding schemes quite often have a project process that they define, either in great degree or very little degree, saying a project should be carried out in such a way. We, at the very simple level, if you use our protocols, you're going to be having better performance from a project. We do not offer any kind of a performance guarantee, but if you use best practice standards, if they're signed off on by an independent third party, you have a higher likelihood of better performance for the project. We work with program administrators such as federal governments and local governments to help them incorporate our protocols into the project processes that they use to base their subsidy schemes off of. And so if you're working within a community that has adopted some of our protocols, they send a clear message to the market about here's the type of clear process we would like you to follow in order to be able to accomplish our schemes. So at this point, a funding program within a country, if it represents a best practice, we'll be looking to incorporate those best practices into our protocols to be used for that country. The next question. Does it matter what standards I use under the protocols, as some standards shown are not available or work within my country? So what we're going to be doing in the protocols is we're going to be basing the protocols off of European standards and off of national standards. And so we're doing significant research, as I mentioned, on what those national standards are, so that when you go into the protocol and attempt to apply them on a project, it will say in the savings calculations area, for the savings calculations for this project, please use either this European standard or refer to this table for the appropriate standard within your country. And so whatever of the European countries that you're working in, you'd be able to work with either the European standard or the national standard that's already is considered best practice within your country. And that's why it's very important for everyone to join us in helping us in our research effort to make sure that we're defining what are truly the best practices within each market. The next question, could you give a bit more detail about an example protocol? What kind of requirements or recommendations does it include? And does it deal with metrics? So our protocols cover the full project life cycle. And I'm just going to go to that protocol page real quick. So the protocols cover this project life cycle from baselining all the way through to measurement and verification. And what it does is it looks at what standards are included in this area, what practices you should use to carry out these standards, and then how you should document this process. So we don't include metrics in here about here's a certain level you should meet, or here's how to measure whether or not you met it. It's a simple yes/no answer. Did you follow this best practice, and did you document it in this way? If you would like to see examples of our protocols, you can go to our website and click on the protocol tab, and we have 6 of our pre-draft protocols on our website that you can take a look at to see exact detail about what those protocols are at this point without any of the European or national standards in them yet, but all of the rest of the material is in there about how to use the protocols. The next question, best practices. There's a question about, is input from leading manufacturers of energy efficient building solutions accepted in the technical forum? Absolutely. Anybody that's involved in the energy efficiency community, we would welcome into the technical forum to join us in carrying out, in really building these tools and making sure they work for whatever markets that those market players work in. Are there protocols being used in the States? I already said yes, there are 6 protocols being used for tertiary buildings, and apartment buildings already being used in the United States. Are there any allies for ICP Europe in the United States, or is there a sister program in the United States? Absolutely is. If you go to eeperformance.org, or just Google Investor Confidence Project, you will find the North American sister program in the United States. What is your evidence for project pipelines in which end-use sectors? So I believe this is talking about how will we build up, what is the evidence for building up project pipelines, and so on, in which end-use sectors. So as stated, we're working in tertiary buildings and apartment blocks is our end-use sectors. And the evidence for project pipelines is that this is what the financial community is telling us are the top barriers to be able to invest into energy efficiency. They're saying particularly the lack of standardized projects coming to them are the number one, not the only, but the number one barrier preventing them from investment. And so what we are attempting to do here is we are attempting to bring that standardization that they are looking for, guided by investors, and then guided by the energy efficiency marketplace to be able to develop tools that can deliver the types of projects they say they need within their pipeline. And so we will only truly see evidence of whether or not that will work once we do this and start to bring these sorts of projects to investors. Another question is there an energy performance contract model available on your website? So one of the beauties of our energy performance protocols is that it can work with any kind of contract model. Whether you are working with an EPC or energy performance contract, or if you are working with some other form of contract, our protocols can help you fulfill that contract. If you're engaged in an energy performance contract as a contractor, it means you're making a guarantee as to the savings on that project. And using our protocols can better protect you and better ensure that you're going to be able to meet that guarantee for that investor or that building owner. We do not offer any kind of model energy performance contracts, but we have a tool. We provide tools that can work with EPCs or with any other contract as well. Next question. To what extent could these protocols help incentivize households to undergo retrofits? How important are institutional investors for the retrofits of household buildings? So let me just preface my answer by saying that we are, at this point, not working on single-family detached residential buildings. We are offering protocols for apartment block buildings. And one of the most significant barriers to renovating apartment block buildings is a lack of access to capital. We have very good developers in the marketplace. We have projects that need renovations. We have lots of best practices and standards out there, and investment is one of the key barriers, and investment at good rates. And the only way we're going to get investment at good rates that are going to be able to entice household owners to be able to renovate their homes is if we bring more standardized, higher quality projects to the investment community. And ultimately, looking at smaller households, the only way we're ever going to be able to get institutional investors to be able to invest into the smaller household size if we're able to aggregate the small project size into larger pools of projects. The transaction costs for investors on small projects are just too great for them to be able to give an investment. The transaction costs eat up the savings from the project. And so therefore, we're going to have to find ways to aggregate smaller projects to make them attractive to institutional investors. And the only way you can aggregate projects is through a standardized approach, so you can actually, the projects were developed in the same way and perform in the same way, and you can bring them together. The next question, how different are how different will the ICP articulate with members of the technical forum if there are in-country advocates? So our technical forum is Europe-wide. Anybody from across Europe can join into our technical forum, and we will be working with them to develop all of our tools and our products and our protocols. The in-country advocates within those countries are helping with the technical aspects, but their primary mission is to help with distributing and disseminating the protocols back out. So these are experts in their field within their countries, and they're going to be working with national governments, local governments, the investment community, and the building community to help them understand how to use our protocols and how to build more standardized projects moving forward. So on the technical side, everybody can join the technical forum, and the in-country advocates are just helping really to push out the protocols and help to allow them to be used within their countries. Next question. Will the protocols be directly usable for staffs of local authorities setting local building refurbishment plans? Absolutely. Local authorities are one of our key groups that we work with. Basically what we offer is we offer you a energy efficiency renovation program process. You can take our process at no cost and use it within your local government program as the project process that you ask developers to use to develop projects. What that means for you as a program administrator is you don't have to create your program from scratch, so you save significant money based on that. You know that we are working with best practice standards that'll work within your marketplace. You're going to have a process that you can train local developers within your community on very easily. And because all the projects that are going to be developed in your community, if you use our protocols, are going to be standardized, you're going to be able to collect better data from projects. So you're going to be able to see what's actually working within your community and how to better manage your program moving forward. So we would love to work with any local government who is setting up an energy efficiency renovation program to help incorporate our tools into your process to be able to really cut down on your costs and improve the types of projects developed in your community. And eventually what that'll do is if you build up a significant pipeline of good quality, highly standardized projects within your community, that's what you're going to need to be able to attract private capital to come in and take over investments in your community. Ultimately, I don't think many local governments want to keep providing subsidies in perpetuity for projects within their community, and building standardized pools of high quality projects are the kind of things you're going to need to have the market be able to come in and take over funding within your communities. The next question. Many of the energy efficiency projects with the public sector in the UK are complicated by EU procurement rules. Given your links, has there been any discussions about streamlining the procurement process for such projects? That's not one of our areas of expertise, but I highly recommend that you talk to EuroACE, the trade association of energy conserving companies out of Brussels. That's EuroACE, ACE. And this is one of their main areas of work within Brussels, is really trying to focus on this issue and how procurement rules are preventing good quality projects. And so they have a very effective campaign going on about this, and I highly recommend that you go to the EuroACE website and get in contact with them about this issue. The next question, and we have about 5 more, and then we're going to close down the webinar. Are there any statistics from the use in the U.S.? Is the application mainly from public service, offices, apartments, or what? So at this point, after 4 years of development of the North American energy performance protocols, over the last year, they have started to be used within the marketplace. The team over in North America spent 4 years developing these protocols, and just in the last about 9 months really took them to market to have them start to be used. And any of you on this call, you're involved in the energy efficiency community, so you know that a project process can take a while. So at this point, we're expecting to see the first projects that have come through the process in North America start to come out around the 3rd quarter, 4th quarter of this year. We'll be able to get data A couple points on that. I think that the data that comes out of projects that use our process, I got to admit, it probably won't be all that exciting. If a project uses our process and is successful, it basically means a project that met its targets for energy efficiency. So if you were trying to get a 30% savings from a project and you used our protocols and you got a 30% savings for that project, that's probably as exciting as a process is going to be, and the details are going to come out of the project. And what I would also just point out is, while what we're doing is novel and that we're bringing together best practices used across the marketplace, ultimately what we are building them with is standards that are already being used in Europe and in countries within Europe. And so the question asks, are there any statistics about projects that go through the process? And what I would just come back to you and say is the process that we're going to be specifying is largely the process that is used by the best practice firms within Europe already. And so you can look to those standards that are already being used, and that really will dictate the process that we're going to be specifying. There was a question about what evidence do you have that there are enough projects that are looking for finance, and in which end-use sectors do you have evidence? I can say both anecdotally, and I'd be happy, probably the best report is going to the Energy Efficiency Financial Institutions Group report. That's at eefig.org. And the entire beginning of that report talks about the lack of financing for the incredible demand that is out there for projects. And so I'd highly recommend that you check out the EFIG report and the section in there about demand for financing, and then I'd be happy offline to talk to you more about any more evidence you need to prove that there are people looking for financing for energy efficiency projects. And I've been working in this space for about 15 years, and I have never found a situation where you have developers or building owners that are saying that access to capital is not a problem. All right. I think that is the last question, everybody, and we've run out of time as well. So we are going to close down this webinar. I would just say again, please remember how to get involved in the process. Please join our technical forum and our ally network, and please sign up for updates and join our website as well. We are only going to be successful if you all join into our effort and make sure that we're successful by building tools that will work for your marketplace. So please do join in, and we look forward to working with you out into the future. We're signing off, everybody. Thanks for joining the call, and keep up the good work out there.